Let's run it again just to make sure nothing broke. Okay, so yeah, their shields are going. Okay. Awesome. Cool. Alright. Come on, ships, bring it. So we got shields working again. The shields look good. We got some new fancy projectiles that look pretty good. We got new backgrounds. I also changed the rate at which the backgrounds move, because I thought they were going a bit too fast. What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Axe Wizard here. Gonna work on my game some more. When last we left off, we did some like miscellaneous bug fixes and cleaned up some code. And I've been busy trying to figure out what I'm gonna do next, and also trying to get more game assets and stuff like that. So some things I've done. Let me get you up to speed here. Is I've been looking for fonts. I think I'm gonna use either XO or XO2, which I can get from Google Fonts. And they're just part of the open font license, so I can use them in my products and projects, print, digital, commercial, or otherwise. So that's pretty good. I don't know why it keeps defaulting me to like a foreign language, but this is what the font looks like. So I think this will be a pretty good fit for my space game. So I'm going to implement that at some point. I've also found this site called GameDeveloperStudio.com, and from what I can tell, it's just this one artist who just throws up his assets. So I got some space projectiles that I got for free, and then I actually bought, if I go here to, yeah, shield. Come on. I bought this shield effect, which I paid a whole whopping 20 cents for it, but totally worth it in my opinion, because this is a pretty sweet shield effect. So I think now that I have a good shield effect that I'm happy with, I'm going to tackle the issue of my sprites looking awful. Also, I found this site, which I'll link in my in the video description, but it's this sunia.itch.io/AI images, and from what I can tell, this fine human being took the Stable Diffusion and bundled it up to a locally running thing, and it gave it a graphical user interface, and it seems to work pretty darn well. I'm not going to fire it up right now because it is very GPU intensive, and I'm already running stuff on my GPU and even recording this video right now as a strain on that. But basically it's like running Stable Diffusion in like the little web browser. So if you go to, like, you know, Stable Diffusion, you got like the little demo that you can run here. It's kind of like this, except there's a lot more options that you can tweak with it. And there was also a setting that I could check called seamless. And what that does is that let me make some more backgrounds. So I've already loaded those into the game. So if we go to Sprites, generated backgrounds, I found like 2 more that I'm happy with, that I didn't have to do anything special with them to make them tile. The seamless setting just made that work for me. So I've got this loaded in the game right now. So let's fire this up. And it looks great. There we go. So this is like a really good background. I also tweaked the speeds at which the background layers move, because I felt like they were moving way too fast. But yeah, so far that looks cool. And now the only big eyesore is the missile trail on the missiles, because of my last change where I tweaked the code and the shields. So let's fix those shields. So I've got a section of assets down here. You probably can't see. Let me minimize some stuff. Here we go. called purchased. So I loaded in the sprite asset, and or the shield asset, and I loaded in some of the projectiles, and I shrunk those down to the size that works for me. So I think that those should work. So maybe we might swap out some projectile sprites too, but for now, let's work on these shields. So how we have it set up right now is we have this object shield that gets created anytime a projectile hits a ship and the shield takes damage. But it looks weird, especially when we're moving, because the object doesn't move with like the ship. So I want to get rid of that object entirely. Like, I don't want to use that. What I do want to use, however, there's nothing in the create event. There's some stuff in the step event, like fading the image alpha of it. And then there's also this old animation end stuff that we had when we had an animated sprite. We're not going to use any of that anymore. The only thing we're going to be doing is something similar, like fading the image alpha, but we're not going to mess with it. So what are we going to do? So I've been thinking about this, and what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to declare some more variables. So we already have shields and shields max. So what we can do is we can sort of do a percentage calculation off of that. And then for our sprite, you know, we can, you know, if we're like above 90% shield, we'll render the last frame. If we're above, you know, 80, this one, 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, 1, and then, you know, something like that, something to make that work. So I think that should be fine. And that way you can actually, you get visual feedback of the shield wearing down, which is super cool. So I think this is going to work perfect. So what I can probably do is I can probably calculate a percentage, except instead of doing the current value divided by the maximum times 100, I'll do times 10. That'll give me, instead of getting like 90 or whatever, that'll give me something like 9.8. And I can basically round that, or even floor it, which is round down, and that will just give me the image index that I should use for this sprite. So cool. So let's handle that. The other thing I need to do is I need to have a variable to track what alpha should be shown, and then fade that alpha out. And I think what I'll do is that when a projectile hits a ship and the shield should take the damage, it'll just set the shield alpha to 1, which is visible, and then my other code will just fade that down. So I think it should look pretty good. I think that will work. So let's do that now. Shield alpha, and we will initialize this to 0. Save this, and let's go to my projectile code. So we go to objects, object projectile. When we do our collisions, we have SCR create shields impact, which is what we're doing here. Where's our scripts? Here we go. Create shield impact. So here we are doing some stuff. So we're creating this instance, we're changing the angle of it, and then we're also dynamically sizing the shield for the ship. So some of this stuff might be useful. So I don't know if I'm going to have to do this every time, though, is the thing. So what I think I might do is I might calculate these. I might calculate this when the ship is created. So when we do our init ship script, and I might just save this to a variable on the ship. So if we just go to shield x scale, and I'll just initialize these to 1, shield y scale. Because what I'm thinking is, like, if I have, you know, a really long ship, I don't want to just necessarily fit that sprite over top of it. and because then you'll have a bunch of room on the sides. What I think I might do is I might just, like, if it's a long ship, I can scale like one axis of it and it will be more of a oval shape to go around the ship. And I don't know if that's going to distort the sprite or not. We're going to try it out. So we'll do that. So let's go to our init ship. I'm starting to get lots of windows open again. Yeah, so we're doing all this stuff here. So what we could probably do is, before we, because I don't want to repeat this code for, you know, however many ships we have, because we only need to do it once. It's just based off of the ship sprite. So since we're passing in the ship sprite, we can do that calculation first, set it, and then go through and set our other sprite specific values based on that. So let's do determine shield scale. And then we're going to determine other variables based on the ship sprite. So for when we're determining the shield scale, what we can probably do is, I think we might just copy and paste this. So let's copy, let's paste. So let's get rid of this. We'll dynamically size the shield. So we're going to be doing, so this is the one problem that we had, is that I don't know how to, let's check the manual, I guess, here. So sprite width. So this is a read-only variable that returns the width of the sprite that's been assigned to the instance. So we haven't assigned the instance yet, though, is the problem. So what I think we have to do is we probably have to just do this first. So assign the sprite. Boom. And so now that I did that, what I can do is I don't have to do that for every little thing here. So we can just get rid of this entirely, because we're already doing it at the start before we do anything. So there we go. Cool. So now we've got that. So we've assigned the sprite index. So that means that we should be able to access these things here. So let's also get the width. Let's go to my sprite placeholder here. I'm going to edit the image, and what I want to do is I want to auto trim all frames. There we go. That gives us a more true sprite look. We have to account for the glow a little bit. So let's see, how much glow is there? Like, how much distance wise? Okay, so each of these grids is 16. So 16, 32, 48, 64. Because we're also going to want to add some padding to that too, so the ship fits inside the shield. So let's do, I don't know, 32. So 32, 64, 96. Let's do 96 padding. Actually, no, let's do 128 pixel padding. When we calculate the size of the shield sprite. So I think that should work fine. So we'll add 128 both sides to that. So let's go back down here to what we're doing here. So I also wanted to get how big it is. So 744 is how wide it is. So we're going to do 744. And then we're also going to add, I'm going to add 128 times 2 because we want that padding on both sides. And we'll also do the same for the vertical. So 746 for the y-axis. So I'm going to copy and paste. We'll do 746. So we'll do sprite width plus padding to make sure the ship fits inside. Sprite height plus padding. Okay, so we've got our sprite width, sprite height, all that. Okay, good. So we're doing our calculation here, and then what was, so we're comparing it as a ratio. So I think we can modify this, because before we were just wanting to keep the scale constant, whereas this time we want to keep the X and Y scale separate. So this is what we were doing like before, was to just get the biggest of the X and Y and then set that for our ratio. But what we want to do is we want to actually keep those separate. So what I think I'm going to do, instead of doing S1 and S2, we're going to do Y1, Y2. We're just going to do that. So what we'll do is we'll do shield X scale, and we're going to set this to be X1 divided by X2. I think that this will work. Shield Y scale equals Y1 divided by Y2. So let's just run a hypothetical here. So let me pop open calculator. So if our ship sprite, let's just go to my generated ships. If I pop open, let's say something extreme like ship 3, right? So my width is 69. Nice. So if we do 69 divided by, actually no, we need to do something first. So we do 128 times 2, which I think is 256. What am I doing? This is no. 128 times 2, 256 plus 744 gives us 1,000. Okay, cool. So we do 69 divided by 1,000. And that gives us the scale that the shield should be at, which is roughly, yeah. So that should work fine. Cool. So I'm pretty confident in the logic that it should work. So yeah, we're doing that. I would say we probably don't need this stuff here. Yeah. So we're dividing our ship width, our ship dimensions by the shield sprite dimensions, and that gives us the ratio or the scale that we need. So cool. Set our ship values accordingly. Okay, cool. So now that should be set. So cool. So now let's go back to our ship. And what we're going to do, actually, let's go back to our projectile code first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment out this. And I'm just going to set shield alpha to 1. Or no, excuse me, other shield alpha. There we go. So what that should do is that when I get hit, it should set my alpha to 1, which means that I should display that. So we have to program that in. So let's go back to my ship. And in the draw event, we're already drawing ourselves. We're drawing weapons. Then we have debug stuff. So right here, we're going to say, draw our sprite if needed. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do draw sprite, and we're going to use the extended because that gives us more stuff here. So draw our shield sprite if needed. So what I'll do is I'm just going to add if, and I'm going to say if shield alpha is greater than 0. And I'm going to just cut this and move this in here. So we're going to draw the sprite. Boom. We also want to calculate the sub image to use, because again, if we want to calculate the sort of the percentage of our shield health. So what we can do here is we can say, I'm going to say, I'm just going to name I'm going to make a var called sub image, and I'm going to set it to equal shields divided by shields max times 10. And so, for example, let's double check our math. Let's pop up in calculator again. Say if we have like our shields is like a max of 800, but we only have, you know, 400. So we have roughly 50%, right? So we'll do 400 divided by 800. It gives us 0.5. And if we do times 10, that gives us 5, which we want to use the sub image 5. So that should work fine. What we can do is that we can also round it down, because our sprite is 0 indexed. So that means that the frames go from 0 to 9 as opposed to 1 to 10. So if we always want to round it down, I think that should work. So yeah, so what we'll do to round it down is GameMaker gives us a little floor function. So we can do floor, and it'll just round it down. So if we have something, you know, say we do something like, instead of 400, we do 399 divided by 800, and we do times 10. That gives us 4.98, which would normally round up to 5. It'll instead round down to 4. So we'll use sub image 4. So I think that should work fine. And then, so we're doing that. Let's do sub image will be, let's see, sprite is going to be SPR P full shield. I did SPR P because I want to denote that that's a purchased asset in case I need to do something with the licenses for that. So I want to keep track of that in my file system here. So sub image will be what we just calculated. The X will be R on X, R on Y. The X scale will be shield X scale, and shield Y scale. The rotation should be our own image angle. Image angle. So whichever way we are facing. The color, I'm not going to do any blending, so we're just going to do C white, which is the normal blending. And then for the alpha, we're going to do the shield alpha. So whatever that value is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this out into multi-line so it's more readable. Whoops, I did that wrong. Boom. Cool. There we go. So now that should work. So what I'll also do is, I think what I might do is I might just, I'm going to copy this to the other ship for now. Normally I would move this to a script if it's going to be done in multiple places, but I think in the very near future, I'm actually going to get rid of enemy ship and just only have one ship that can be controlled by the player or AI. So that'll be done when I get my faction system worked out, which will probably be in an episode coming up when I'm ready to tackle that. So let's go back to my objects, wherever they are. There they are. Test enemy. I'm going to paste this in their draw event. Boom. And then I'll also copy the other variables that we made. I got so many things open now. Holy cow. So we got shield alpha and X and Y scale. So I'm going to copy these. You know, I'm just going to save this. I'm going to go close all but this, and then just pop open test enemy again. There we go. So in the create event, boom, set that. So now, I think this should work. Let me just go back to my projectile code, because we have two different events, which I'm also hoping to consolidate into one single event when that that time comes around. So copy. Look at that. We still have an argument that doesn't need to be here from when we fixed our explosions and stuff. Also can get rid of this. And then we will comment out this. There we go. So now, I think this should work. So we'll see. Fingers crossed. Come on, do it. Come on, hit me. It's kind of working. It's not drawing it on top of my ship though, which is weird. I guess it is. Interesting. I wonder if to add that padding how we want, we probably have to calculate. We have to subtract it instead of adding it to it, because that might skew that ratio more. So let's go back to init ship where we're doing that calculation. And then we'll just change this to a minus and see if that works. Come on, hit me, boyos. There we go. Oh yeah, it's working. Okay, so we don't have anything to fade the image alpha though. So as soon as we hit them, it's just drawing that. So what we need to do now is in our player and enemy ships, we need to do our step event. And I'm just going to add fade our shield alpha. So I'm going to say if alpha, you know, I'm just going to do it no matter what. I'm going to say, no, I'm just going to do if shield alpha is greater than 0. Then shield alpha will be minus equal, and I'll put what I had earlier, which I think is 0.7 or whatever. I think that's what my old code was doing. And then just to be sure, ensure that we don't get a negative alpha. So then what we'll do is if shield alpha is less than 0, we are going to hard clamp that down. Shield alpha equals 0. Cool. So I'm going to copy this, move this to my test enemy step event. We'll do it above the AI stuff. Okay. There we go. There we go. So now our shield is showing up. Pretty happy with how it looks. Looks all right. So the shield's not showing up. Okay, so let's test it on a real ship instead of my little dummy ship. So let's go into my create event, and I'm gonna init ship. What was it? 6, I think, was my really big one. We're gonna see how it looks on this big guy. Oh yeah. Now we in business. Look at that. I'm taking so much damage. This is not good. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Alright, we fixed how the shields look. I'm pretty happy with how that looks. I think that looks pretty darn good. Tell you what doesn't look good is those missile trails when they're moving. So let's also fix that. SCR particle control was my script that does all the particle stuff. So clean up particles, particle explosion, thruster particles, missile trail particles. Here we go. So I think I also want to change the particle type direction. Boom. Set the region variables for the emitter. I'm going to de-indent this so it doesn't look weird. And the particle that we're going to be messing with is not ship thruster. It's going to be P-type missile trail. And the direction it should be going is going to be the image angle minus 180. So if it's facing this way, it's going to go this way. So cool. I think that should work. I don't know if it's going to make a difference at all, though, just because of how it looks going through the air. So let me get some speed, and I'll turn to the side, and I will fire. It doesn't make a lick of difference. That's just how... I think I might have to get rid of the missile trail particles if I can't make them work how I want to. That's a shame. I'm getting these guys down low though. The shields are breaking. Nice. So there's another bug that I wanted to fix with in regards to the shields. So let's just I'm gonna add a thing to revisit that. So let's close all but this, and then I want to pop open object controller, which is where I have a lot of my notes here made. So I just created like another visual bug here. So we'll say visual quirk, missile trails just don't look right. And the reason why they don't look right is because I added in the last episode, I changed how the shooting works. So if you're moving this way, but you're facing this way, so you're gliding up and you fire, before when you fired, the projectile would just keep moving and it looked really weird. So now when you fire, the projectile also moves with you. So it looks more like natural. So the missile trails are showing at a weird angle because that's how it's actually moving, and that doesn't look right is the problem. So yeah, I'm not too happy with how that looks. So figure that out. So I'm gonna add that there. So I made note of that. So shield visuals, we fixed that. I'm going to get rid of that. The other shield thing was shield regeneration during combat feels off. So what this means is that I want to add a cooldown before a shield can start recharging. And I also want to make that recharge faster. So another thing we're probably going to have to do is I will say... so we've got shield alpha, and I'm going to say shield cooldown as well. And I'm going to set this to, I'm going to set this to 0. And then I'm going to set shield cooldown max. And how long should you not take damage before your shield starts recharging? I want to say 10 seconds would be good. So in theory, if the step event runs 60 times a second, we can set it to 600, and that would equal roughly 10 seconds. Roughly 10 seconds. Okay? So now that we got that, what we can do is, in the step event, we will do... Handle shield cooldown. Where am I doing shield stuff? Okay, so we're doing all this stuff. I'm just going to move this. Oops, I did not mean to do that. Just going to move all this stuff back up here. So, okay, so shield regen. I think I might phase out the whole shield regen thing and just let it restore like one every... Because right now it's restoring 1 per second back, which is not great, especially if you have a shield that's like, 800 strength. That's not the best. So that so 60 per second is probably a good recharge rate. So I think I might just get rid of that entirely. So yeah, let's get rid of shield regen just entirely. I don't want to deal with it. We don't need it anymore. So what we can do is do shields plus equal 1. Okay. All right. So we're probably going to shield regen. So let's make this if, and I'm going to say if shield cooldown is 0, so that means you're able to regenerate, and shields are less than shields max, and it's time to regenerate. Okay, we got that. Cool. So, and then we also have ensure we don't have super shields. Awesome. And then we also need to do count handle shield cooldown timer. So what we can do is that if shields is greater than 0, or not shields, shields cooldown, or shield cooldown is greater than 0, then what we're going to do is we're going to say shield cooldown minus equals 1. So it's just going to count that down. And then to make this work properly, what we're going to do is that in our projectile, when we hit OBJ good guys, we're going to set other shield cooldown equals other shield cooldown max. So I'm just going to do that just for the collision with OBJ good guys for right now, because I haven't tweaked the other ship yet. And also in my draw event, I also want to keep track of maybe my shields. So what I'll do is I'll say shields, and I'll say MSG equals MSG plus, we'll do a new line, shields, and I'll do plus string, and we'll do shields plus, and we'll do a separator there, plus string, shields max. Okay. So there. So now we can see what my shields are. So I've got, you see my shields are going down pretty fast. So I think I might have to just destroy all these guys really quick. So I'm just going to light them up while clicking backwards like an absolute chad. It's going to take a lot of damage, really. There we we go. Now they're starting to show some wear. So my shield popped up again because... There we go. Okay, so now if we wait 10 seconds, you should see my shields should start to recharge. There we go. So now my shields are recharging. Cool. So that mechanic is working how we want it to. So this will be a lot easier to tell when I implement UI stuff, and I think I'm pretty close to being able to start doing that. So cool. So let's finish up. Let's just make sure we're doing the same thing for OBJ test enemy right now. This will be so much better once I don't have to do this twice. There we go. And then let's go and we will just like copy all this stuff just to make sure we're doing the same thing. OBJ test enemy, create. Boom. And then for the step event, for test enemy, I don't think we're doing... Yeah, so we're already doing this stuff here, so we can get rid of this. And then just to double check, let me go back up here. Yeah, we are. And what's this? We can fix this little thing here. Whoops. There we go. Cool. So I think this should work now. Let's go back to my projectile code. And we're going to do the same thing here for OBJ bad guys. Save. Let's run it again just to make sure nothing broke. Okay, so yeah, their shields are going. Okay. Awesome. Cool. Well, I'm pretty happy with that. I think that shield looks great. The other thing I wanted to play around with was, let's see, how long have I been recording? 44 minutes. The other thing I wanted to play around with really quick was testing out some of these new projectile sprites. So I think let's try that out. So let's go to my, let's see. So now we got all this working, I'm going to close all but this. Let's go back to my scripts, and for weapon, okay, so what ones do I got? Let's see. So I'm going to do SPR Gen P projectile 1 for the light cannon. And then for the rocket launcher, we still have the rocket, so that's fine. For the medium cannon, I was using this other one that I did. Let's see, generated projectiles. It was this one, but I'm not really vibing with that one. So let's change this one to... So this is the first projectile one. This is the second. This is the third. This is the fourth. And this is the fifth. So I'm not using this one because this one's like longer. And it looks sort of similar. So I think I might do, what is that, P projectile 5? P projectile 5. So now we got that updated. Let's save this and see how it works now. Oh yeah, those projectiles look great. Cool. There we go. So we got shield working, we got shield regen fixed, we've got some new better looking projectiles that look pretty good, look pretty snazzy. We got like some the other backgrounds and stuff that we added. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with how this looks. So, another win. Save. Let me close all but this, and then let me pop open my object controller again. And let me update, let's see, so we did shield regeneration during combat feels off. We fixed that. That's good to go. Yeah. So we've got all that stuff. We got issues, bugs. I added the missile quirk that I'm not happy with. So I'll fight with that another time. Another quick thing that we can do is prevent ships from stacking on one another. So let's handle that. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a script. I'm going to say SCR ship collision. And all we're going to be doing for this is, let me do these fancy JS doc comments here. So we've got function SCR ship collision desk for description ensures that ships can't stack on top of one another. Because the problem that I was running into is like when I'm flying around those ships, eventually they'll all be chasing me and they're all just kind of standing as one. So you can't tell how many ships are really there. And that is a problem. So I want them to just kind of like not stack on top of each other. So yeah, and then that's all we need there for the JS doc stuff. So now what we can do is move slightly if we are colliding with a ship. So what we can do here is we just say if I'm gonna first check to make sure that the instance exists. If instance, God, here we go, it exists, and we'll just say other because I'm gonna call this script from a collision event. We'll see meant to be called from collision event. Okay. Then what I can actually do here is I can say if instance doesn't exist, then what I can do is I can do an early return because we're working in this confined function here. No instance, just return early and do nothing. Boom. So now I can put return. So now I don't have to keep indenting my code a bunch. So now move slightly. So what we're going to do is if x is greater than other x, then I'm going to, so if my x is greater than the other x, that means that I'm to the right of where they are, then that means that I should keep going, I should scoot to the right more. So I'm going to say x plus equals 1. Else x minus equals 1. And then we're going to do the same thing for the y-axis. So if y is greater than other dot y, which means that we are above them. No, if y is greater, that means that we are below them. Because the farther, the greater the y, it means the farther down the axis you are. So y plus equals 1. Else y minus equals 1. So now we have this little tiny script here, and then we can go to our obj test ship here, which I closed. Here we go. And I can just say add event, collision, objects, and I'm just going to have it collide with itself for right now. And we're just going to say handle collision. So we're going to say SCR ship collision. Cool. Save this. Let's go back to my player ship really quick. And I'm going to set this to, where's my create event? Here it is. Ship 3, which is my super fast ship. And I'm just going to fly around them. Later, dorks. So basically, like, as I fly in circles, starting to see like they were almost colliding with each other a little bit, and then they weren't. So let me see. Let me just stop here and see what they do. There we go. So you can see how they're like colliding. See how they're accelerating? Oh, that looks weird. That looks really weird. I don't know if I like how that works. They're basically like bumper ships. That looks kind of silly. You know what? I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it how it was, because you know, if you're in space, I mean, you could be over top each other. Maybe there's just a whole stack of ships shooting at you. Deal with it, because I don't see an elegant way of handling that without re-engineering all of my movement, and that's not something I want to do. So I am going to delete this event entirely. Save, and I'm going to delete this script entirely. Cool. And let me just run it once more just to make sure. Alright. Come on, ships, bring it. So we got shields working again. Oh, the shields look good. We got some new fancy projectiles that look pretty good. We got new backgrounds. I also changed the rate at which the backgrounds move. I thought they were going a bit too fast. So I played with that a little bit too. There we go. So some of the shields don't fit around like the weirdly shaped ships, which I think I don't really have a good way of handling that. I already added a bunch of offset to it, so that could be something that I have to live with, I guess. But yeah, I'm just having fun flying around shooting spaceships. Come get it, losers. Oh, my shield's starting to get low. Let's see. Yeah, my shields are 87 out of 150. If I just fly around long enough, there we go. Now I'm back to full shields. Of course, that means they are too, which is a problem. Oh no, I'm flying right at them. It's bad. All right, cool. We've done it. So, good stuff there. So, I'm going to just remove this issue, prevent sticks from ships from stacking on one another. It's not going to be a problem. So, yeah, I think I'm at a point now where I there's not really too much more that I can really do until I tackle the factions, because factions and hostile ship tracking, it's gonna change up a lot of the code. So for example, one big change is that I'm not gonna need these OBJ good guys and OBJ bad guys parent objects. Those aren't gonna work anymore, because there's gonna be many different factions within the game, and you know, if you're at war with a faction, as soon as you zone into a system, they're gonna start like just pounding you. So I want to be able to do that. I also want to be able to track like individual threats. So for example, if you're just some random pirate decides to attack you, or if you manually select a ship and decide, hey, I'm going to attack you, and you start shooting them, then they start shooting you back. You're both kind of fighting each other, but not necessarily part of any faction. So that needs to be handled as well. And that will change the projectile collision sprite. So I'll just be instead of colliding with object good guys or bad guys, I'll just be colliding with object ship. And if I have the factions working right, then I'll be able to just only have one object ship that can be used for both player and enemies. So I won't have to duplicate all this code twice, which will be fantastic. So I think that's probably going to be the next episode when I eventually get to that. I think I have an idea of how I want to do that. So, yeah. And I'll also be able to finish the rest of the enemy AI as well. Not enemy AI, but the non-player controlled ship AI. because currently, like, they're just attacking me because I exist, because they're trained to see if a target exists first before they do anything else. So, yeah. Anyway, it's coming along nicely. I'm happy about these new assets. I think the shield looks really, really good, and I guess I'll dig in and get these faction stuff figured out, and then that'll be next episode. That might be a bit rough, but once we get that done, we're going to be able to do a lot of cool stuff. So, anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in whatever video I make next.